The J. Michael Show.
Another J. Michael Show, and our guest today is Kevin Michael Brown. Let's just get into it and say hi to Michael.
Hello.
Hello.
Kevin Michael Brown. You can just call me Kevin or KB, whatever works for you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Man, I am admiring those guitars in your background. Tell me about them.
Well, thank you. I've got, there's no secret. I am a huge Beatles fan, especially a McCartney fan. And I've been a bass player and drummer through the years. And this one right here is actually a 66 Hofner Beatle bass. It's an actual one that was made in 1966 in the same factory McCartney's bass was made. So it's a vintage one. The one behind me is a Hofner Shorty, little short scale. Mm-hmm. And the one to that side is an Epiphone Casino, similar to what John played in the Beatles. So it's kind of a Beatles Wall of Fame guitar collection there. So yeah.
We're definitely going to get into your music. But I'd like you to take a moment and just sort of let our audience know who Kevin Michael Brown is and some of the shows you've been in.
Cool. Well, I'm Kevin Brown, and there's a mutual friend of ours, James Morrison, who really has made a beautiful career as an actor. Mm-hmm. I made a living as a musician for a while. I still play a little bit occasionally, but I'm back focusing on the acting. And when I went to Cal Arts many years ago, I graduated in the '80s and moved to LA, and did a couple shows, couple things here, a movie called Permanent Record when I was 26. Mm-hmm. It was right when Keanu Reeves was becoming Keanu Reeves. And, and then another part of my story is recovery. I spent a number of years fighting alcoholism, trying to not be an alcoholic, trying to make it work somehow. And so I wasn't, I did a play or two, but I didn't do much. I didn't have much going on in the 90s. Not a lot going on. And then, then I got into recovery, and the early 2000s were mostly just kind of building a new life and playing some music. I played bass and sang, and a couple, we had a blues trio called Code Blue. Then we made a self-produced CD, and it was 2004. And then I joined an established classic rock cover band called The Answer to Classic Rock. And these guys were all a decade older than me, if you can believe that. Amazing musicians. And they had a cover band that I always, I was in cover bands, and I always wanted to be a cover band that really sounded like the record, mm-hmm. Cover band that really would catch your attention. And so they played the circuit of concerts in the park all around Southern California. And so I played with them, and I became their drummer, and we toured Southern California for a number of years. That ended almost exactly 10 years ago. And then, I was just refocused on, why did I come to LA? I came to LA to be a working actor, to be an actor. And, I've worked on a couple of shows since then. One that was canceled, recurring guest star actually on a show called Wicked City that got canceled. Mm-hmm. And like day player things, a couple other guest stars and co-stars in the ill-fated but redone reboot of Nash Bridges at a nice little scene with Don Johnson, and a couple of things along the way. And talked to my agent and my manager, and we're just on we're on the long game. I am at the point in my life where, I didn't come to LA to make it as an actor. Like I won't be, I'm not successful if I'm not, a star
Uh-huh.
or anything like that. And so, I got back into acting. Why I got into acting in the first place, because it was fun and I was good at it.
Right.
And I've really enjoyed the past couple of years. Um, I did a thing with Catherine Hahn, Tiny Beautiful Things. I got cut out of one of the episodes of those. Um, and I did a turn as Andy Warhol on a series for Apple called The Shrink Next Door with
Mm-hmm.
Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd. I had a small scene with them, and it was in the middle of COVID. So
Wow.
I was in a scene right in the scene with them, but we never touched hands. We never actually got to meet. I went in there in full Warhol makeup, which
Mm-hmm.
I'll send you a picture. You can post it if you like when you edit. Um,
I'll put it in the
and
promo.
so, yeah, it's like one of those things where you go, you know what? I did an episode of a series with Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell, and I'm in this scene with Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell, and it's this funny little joke, and it just ended up just going, just just flying by you. The joke was really kind of lost, and it's like, and I never got to hang out with Will or Paul because we were dead center of COVID, and the protocols on the set where you went to one room and they went to another room, the extras went to another room, and it was just a very strange way to shoot things. But still really exciting to be around those guys who are so talented.
Wow. Wow. You've also done, of course, you mentioned Nash Bridges. You've done Grey's Anatomy, Wicked City,
Grey's
Hunter.
Anatomy.
So when did you start acting?
I started in high school. I lived in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of two parts of my story. I grew up in Riverside, California until I was 9. Then we moved to Anchorage, Alaska, uh, in the early '70s, which is like moving to the dark side of the moon, especially from Southern California. And that's where I met James Morrison, your and I mutual friend,
Uh-huh.
who did a lot of work on 24. And James and I did a show together many, many years ago when I was first getting into it. So I got into it in high school. I went from racing motorcycles to theater. And what got me into theater, I think, was really sort of like family replacement therapy, where it's like I found a group of people that were just as weird as I am, and just as creative as I am, and tribal in the best sense that they're supportive of people who were creative, and you kind of found your tribe. I sort of found my tribe, and so kind of like everything else, I jumped into that real heavy. I did some shows at the University of Alaska while I was still in high school. They had a great theater program there, at a beautiful, huge theater. So I was doing shows at the university while I was finishing my senior year in high school. Um, and it was just an exciting time. I
Yeah.
was raised on live theater. My training was on live theater, and I went to school at Cal Arts, California Institute of the Arts, and got my BFA in theater there, and then moved down to Los Angeles after that.
Have you ever had the opportunity to play with James Morrison guitars?
Uh,
He's an excellent guitarist.
yeah, no, he's an excellent guitar player, and for one reason or another, we didn't reconnect until God, only like about 15 years ago.
Hmm.
And he had become a pretty big deal. And I was like, I know this guy. We're friends from Alaska, and so I haven't had a chance, because I was out playing classic rock and he was doing all of his original stuff and
Hmm.
most of that solo acoustic stuff. So we have actually never been in the same band at the same time, but we had both been on stage together. I'm giving away a secret here. We were both mimes. We're both recovering mimes. I did a lot of mime training, and so did he. James was, like circus training and mime training and voice and, everything else. And he was doing work at the Alaska Repertory Theater when I was just finishing up high school. He was like full on member of the company, and it was a brand new repertory company. It was Alaska's first repertory company, and James was a part of that. And I was in awe of it. And I was actually going to go intern with them, but I got accepted to theater school instead. And there was a part of me that was like, if I don't get out of Alaska, I may never get out of Alaska.
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted to go train. I wanted to be a trained actor. I really wanted to get my degree. And I just knew how much I loved Southern California. And so I chose to get out. And then, James, of course, in the 80s moved down here, did a bunch of plays and a bunch of TV. And that's how he got fired up.
Yeah, yeah. What was the first role, TV or movie, that you were given?
Let's see. Yeah, there was a soap opera called Santa Barbara. That was a big deal in the 80s. And when I was my senior year at Cal Arts, we did a showcase in town in LA. And because there was no internet, there was no Cast It network. It was old school, which was, submissions through an agent, and the agent would drive to the different studios to kind of try to get people, get them to look at their people or bring people in for auditions. And the casting director for Santa Barbara came to this showcase, and they called me in when they were first making the show. And I went in and I read for one of the leads, one of the regular guys. And I went and read for her, and she was like, "You did great. Come back on Thursday and we'll have you read for producers." I'm like, okay, wow. And I read for the producers, and my face was too angular. This was how I didn't get it. My face was too angular. I was going to play the guy that played Robin Wright's brother. That's who I was auditioning for. I didn't get that, but my first professional show ever on TV was a day player on Santa Barbara. The same casting director had brought me in, and my line was, "Hey, are you Nick Hartley? I have a package here." That was my Academy Award-winning performance on Santa Barbara. That was my first job.
Wow. Well, you've done a whole lot of things since then. And I also want to talk to you about, you had a project going on called American Treehouse. And I'd like for you, if you will, to take a moment and tell me about that project, how it got started, your involvement with it, and everything about American Treehouse.
Yeah, well, it actually, as when you saw the sizzle reel for it, which I'll send you the link to that if that's something that you need. I built a treehouse for my stepkids a little over 10 years ago. I had, it was my second marriage, and I instantly became a stepdad to 3 kids. It was sort of like marrying into half of the Brady Bunch. And they knew I could build stuff, and I was like, yeah, there was a tree on the hill. I was like, yeah, I could build you guys a treehouse. And then a year later, my stepson goes, "So where's the treehouse?" I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to actually build this. So I did, and I started building this treehouse for them. And it kind of got away, it kind of started as a small project and became big.
Right.
And we built this beautiful tree house up on the hill in our backyard, actually in LA. And then it was after it was built that I kind of got the idea. Remember there was that show, American Chopper?
Yeah.
And there was a show called Treehouse Masters, was the only treehouse show on at that point in time. And my brother-in-law is a world-class cinematographer, and he was home between jobs for like 2 days. And I go, because I had an idea like American Treehouse. And I was like, okay, what could we do? What could we do how would this be different than something like Treehouse Masters? And what Treehouse Masters was, and this is nothing against them. They are a fantastic show and they've been very successful. They would do sort of a complete build each episode.
Mm-hmm.
And my idea was I'd like to have a series, like, 10 episodes for the season of following projects, seeing what real people are building, and then get people to send in ideas for Treehouse or why we should build a Treehouse for them. And then at the end of the season, we would build an American Treehouse for them. It was a really great concept. And so we did that sizzle reel. We sent it off. And this is kind of like a very typical Hollywood story. It's like we went to Endemol. We went to a couple of the bigger houses, 44 Blue, and I forgot the other one. But they were all too busy. And we went and met with the guys at Endemol, which was this huge building on Sunset, the top. You go, it's like 9,000 Sunset or what it was. It was the top floor. We went to this huge conference room and pitched it to this guy, to the head of new acquisitions. And he ran it by his team and he said, look, it's just a little too small for us, just the concept. And so then we signed with a marketing company, the same people that did Judge Judy and stuff like that. We were getting all of this buzz, and the sizzle reel was very successful. And then we got a call. It just kills you. We got a call from the DIY network because they didn't have a tree show yet.
Right.
Like here, Animal Planet, which is not about tree houses, had the treehouse show, and DIY didn't. So they asked us to film some more stuff. We filmed some more stuff. More footage, and sent it in, and it was between us and a show called Treehouse Guys. And they ended up going with Treehouse Guys. So we were that close to getting this thing done and getting this thing made into a series, which is a very, very common story around Los Angeles. There's a lot of really good shows, some good scripts, some good ideas out there that are still bouncing around. And so we kind of lost the steam. We had that momentum and we lost that steam. And so they were like, oh, okay, now there's already Treehouse shows. So, but what has changed since then is that there are so many different ways to get things made now, and so many different platforms for a show that it is something we definitely should revisit and retool. It's just, I just haven't gotten around to kind of getting behind that again and working up some of that energy. But I think it's a really good concept. I think it still is a good concept, and it's different from the current shows. And it's something that I wanted to do. It was a little more based in, actual families and helping them build tree houses, and something, instead of just building tree houses for rich people, we would be digging into what people are doing around the United States. So who knows? We'll see if we can get that sucker still made.
Yeah. I remember that I sent it off twice to the Magnolia Network, and I never heard anything back from it. But so you would do the show again now if you had a chance?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we have some, we had a bunch of ideas. We were doing log lines on different episodes and different styles, everything from having like a dog cam, into a kids cam where they're doing their pitch for the week, that kind of stuff. And just have it more based in with a portal, like an interactive thing where they send ideas. One of my favorite shows was Mythbusters, where the audience was sending in ideas and would challenge them on some of their results and stuff and say, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. That's what I wanted, was a more interactive thing where people, it's like this becomes a family show where we're going after what you guys are building and we're going to be driven by what you guys want to see. So it was definitely a more interactive thing instead of just building tree houses, getting in a fight over it, and then revealing at the end of the episode that we built this big tree house for somebody, which is beautiful. It's lovely. And it was a great concept. They've done very well with it. But I still think this concept has life and has legs now, probably more than ever, since there are so many platforms now to
Yeah.
get something like that produced.
Yeah. Have
So
you
who
thought
knows?
about maybe going independent and just shooting several episodes yourself and then
Yeah,
pitch that?
we've thought about that, and it's just a question of getting finances. Whether it was if we could do a crowdfunding thing about that, or if we could do another one of those creative sources of generating income, or enough money to get, say, a couple episodes produced,
Mm-hmm.
on a shoestring budget, but be able to get a full episode produced and in the can, that we
Mm-hmm.
could shop that one around to the dozens and dozens of platforms that didn't even exist when we had this first concept 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Is the treehouse that you built still standing?
it's still there. It's a little weathered, just because Tarzana, California, it gets hot. There's a lot of sun. It's very hot. But yeah, it's up there. It's still, my stepkids outgrew it. They're all in college now, and but it's still the best, the coolest place on our hill, and it's still there. And the oak that it's built in is still thriving,
Uh-huh.
and it's as beautiful as ever. Just a little dustier and a little creakier, but yeah, it's still there.
Wow. Wow. And your kids, I assume, well, they're older now, so do they play in the treehouse?
Yeah, it's just a good place to go hang. It's a great
Mm-hmm.
place to see the sunset. It's like the top part of our property, of our hill, where
Mm-hmm.
you can actually see out in the San Fernando Valley. So it's just a place if you want to go meditate or do something of that sort. It's just a nice little getaway.
Mm-hmm.
You just take steps up, just like, the funny thing is, the concept is exactly what we said in the sizzle reel. Like, it started as an idea. The treehouse was never, the show was never the goal. The
Mm-hmm.
show wasn't even in my mind. I was building a treehouse for my stepkids because I promised them I would.
Right.
And then after it was built, and they're actually, my three stepkids at those young ages are in the sizzle reel
Mm-hmm.
as well. That's them. So they were our actors to act like the kids in the treehouse that day. So yeah.
Well, let's step back again to your music career. And the
Sure.
band was The Answer to Classic Rock.
The Answer to Classic Rock.
Who started that? And you were a drummer, right?
I was a drummer. I started out as you know, they, when I was doing this blues band that I told you about, Code Blue, in 2002, 2003, and writing songs for that, and putting together gear to be a sort of a power trio to go play to 15 people in a tiny bar, because nobody would know. Hardly anybody in LA goes to hear like little tiny blues bands and little dive bars. And I would go to these guys' shows because, like I said, they were the kind of classic rock band that I aspired to. That they sounded, they just played well, and they had a really good mix,
Mm-hmm.
and a good mix of songs. The lead singer was great, and also the bass player. And so I started hanging around with them for a bit, and they were, you kind of hanging around somewhere long enough, they're going to end up hiring you,
Right.
So I was just like, here, pay this guy to go tune some guitars. And so I tuned guitars for him a little bit. Then I became their road manager for the Southern California shows, to help get the crew together and get things set up and tuned throughout the show, and then tear down, packed up. And then I sat in as drummer for an episode, for a couple of shows when the drummer couldn't make it. And then I eventually became the drummer. And so that was really an amazing thing. They had been around forever. The two guys that started it, Van Mosley and Jim Searing, have been friends since high school. They saw Beatles at Dodger Stadium. They saw the Doors at Hollywood Bowl. They just, they were best friends, and they liked classic rock back when it was just rock. They were young and it was just rock. It wasn't classic rock yet. And so they just, they were great friends and good musicians. And, they played together for a long time.
Yeah.
And they took some time off in the 80s and the 90s. And then at the end of the 90s, Jim's motto, Jim, who's independently wealthy, says, if we can't outplay them, we'll outspend them. So he would get really, really good equipment, but they did really well, and they were a really good band. And I was really lucky to slip in and play with these guys, playing for thousands of people, playing the classic rock that you and I grew up on.
Right.
Playing the stuff that I loved, and it's like, how lucky is that to
be able
to get paid to hit things with sticks, playing the music that you grew up with.
Yeah.
There's just nothing better than that. So classic rock is classic rock for a reason, because it's classic and it's going to be around forever. So, so once that ended, I was sort of like, I don't want to go start another bar band again.
Right.
I don't want to go play to 15 people playing classic rock covers that we did so well in this band. And for thousands playing, we played the Grove in Anaheim. We played the Burbank Starlight Bowl a couple of years. We were good friends with the band called the Fab Four. Very, very good friends with them. And so, we hung out together a lot. We opened for the Fab Four a couple of times, stuff like that. And, to have that opportunity to play that music, it was my creative outlet for a decade, and when that ended, I was like, man, I got to do something. And so, working again as an actor and starting to build that resume up again has been the best. You find out that working as a day player is really one of the hardest jobs on an episode of any particular show. And so, it's exciting. It's really exciting when I book something, but it's still exciting to get a lot of auditions for what's going on.
If somebody says classic rock to me, I think of the 70s. Today, if you say classic rock, people think you're talking about the 80s or the 90s, and I go way back further than that. To me, that was the decade, the 70s, with the best music. That was it.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Sure. Totally.
So did you have particular songs or particular bands that you wanted to cover when you were in this cover band?
Well, we, of course, love the Beatles. They love the Beatles. Beatles are hard to do well, especially when our friends are in the Fab Four is just one of the best Beatles tribute bands on the planet. And they've, they tour the USA. They've gone international. They're really, really good. And so
I've actually seen them here in Waco. I think they played here.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, they're good friends of mine. I am stepfather to Artie's daughter, and good friends with these guys. We've known each other. We've known each other back when they were playing this crummy little bar in Marina Del Rey called Scruffy O'Shea's, and they would play on Tuesday nights, and they would play 3 sets: early, mid, early Sgt. Pepper, and late Beatles. And they were just, again, when you find a band that interests you and inspires you, it's like you go and see that band. And that's,
right.
They were doing a really good job of playing the Beatles live. And I was like, those guys are good. And that's how we became friends. So Beatles, CCR, John Mellencamp, we do everything from Sweet Home Alabama to some country songs. To get the line dancers going and that stuff. So pretty much whatever hit list you had on your mixtapes was kind of what we were playing.
Right.
So yeah.
I love Pink Floyd cover bands. Did you ever try attack Pink Floyd?
We did not. And maybe it was best that we didn't, I was in a power trio called Tricycle back in the 90s. And our lead lead guitarist, was a huge Floyd fan. So we did Comfortably Numb.
Mm-hmm.
I think we did an okay job with it, but now I look at it and I go, I would never touch that again unless I had a band that was really, really crackerjack, because you hear it now and you just go, man, you hear so much more than you used to. My ears have gotten more deaf over the years from all the noise and stage noise, but they've gotten more discerning in terms of hearing the whole mix of some of those classic rock songs and going, wow, this is why this is so good.
Right.
To be able to really hear it and appreciate it. And new technology, and the new remixes and stuff are really interesting to me. The Giles Martin mixes of the Beatles music, some of the remasters that he's done, the Beatles Love Show, the soundtrack he did for that, Giles Martin's, George Martin's son, who's done just extraordinary work. And so that keeps that stuff alive. The Beatles, again, are my favorite band, and I think I just think they're sort of the number one band of my generation,
Right.
of their songs. So, yeah.
You were, of course, the drummer in The Answer to Classic Rock, but you also play guitar. So do you play lead or do you play rhythm?
No, I am a bass guitar player. I've started on guitar. I will out myself as a very rudimentary guitar player. I am not an excellent guitar player. I have a really good ear. I think I'm pretty good at some rhythm stuff. But I was a McCartney fan, and I gravitated towards the bass.
Yeah.
And started playing bass in high school, and I wanted that bass for about 15 years, and I could never afford it.
Right.
I wanted to be McCartney. I wanted to be Sting in the 80s. I wanted to be Sting. Bass player, sings super high. But, a great bass player and a great musician. And so that's always been attractive to me.
Yeah.
And I still think McCartney's the best. And it's like nobody, everyone knows who Paul McCartney is. Right. And he took the bass to a whole new level way back then.
Yeah.
Way back. He brought the bass to the forefront, and not just in a garish way, but because he was so damn good, because they were so damn good. And Ringo's parts fit right in with what he was doing. And, it's extraordinary. So yeah, bass is where I ended up. And then luck would have it that I got to go beat the hell out of the drums and get paid for it. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
Your wife is also an actress, right?
My wife went to theater school as well. We actually met at CalArts years and years ago, went off to two different lives and careers. And my wife is an award-winning casting director. She cast 24 and Chicago Hope. She jumped the table. She tried, she just couldn't stand the rejection, which most of us can't. And but because she's an actress, she had a really great eye for talent. And so she became a casting director. And I learned so much from her, not from her teaching me something necessarily, but hearing what people do that's wrong, hearing mistakes that actors make. And it's been so, just to be a fly on the wall for how things go. And the first thing I did 2 episodes, actually, a show called Franklin and Bash. And that was one of the first shows I did, coming back into acting after a long time. I did a day spot on that, but it was with the 2 leads, and it was great. But I just learned how to act for the camera again. And I learned some of the mistakes and pitfalls that most people do, especially the day player. I know I keep saying that, but to come in as a day player, I'll give you an example. Do we have time?
Yeah, plenty of time.
Okay. on the Don Johnson thing, the Nash Bridges thing.
Right.
I have this little scene with Don, and it was a walk and talk, 2-shot walk and talk with Don. And I heard all the things. I flew to San Francisco. We filmed it on location on Fisherman's Wharf, which is where I vacationed as a kid. My mom loved Nash Bridges, so she's passed many years now, but there's got to be some sort of cosmic connection that I did an episode. I did the Nash Bridges movie in San Francisco, no less. And so word on the street was that Don likes you to be off book, and I had a bunch of lines telling him about describing a crime scene to him, like I'm his coroner guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we get there and I meet Don and like, okay, we're all setting everything up, a bunch of extras, like dead bodies and all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, okay. And the director comes and says, well, we're going to do this, we'll do that. And when we get here, we'll do that. And Don goes, no, that one should be over here. Mm-hmm. And this one should be over there. And so switch those lines. And so he's switching my lines. He didn't have much to say. He's like switching all my stuff. And I'm like, I'm really glad I know this thing because this could go really badly if I didn't, right? And so it was cool. So then they were setting up the shot, and they're a lot faster at that these days with LED lighting, and the crews are crackerjack. So there's generally not an hour between a blocking rehearsal and when you shoot, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm there, and I'm just like, I'm walking it, talking it, just trying to relearn those lines. And Don was there, and he asked me, he said, you want to run lines? A couple of them. So we ran it, and there was one line it didn't work. And I go, look, I can just drop that one. He's like, yeah, cool. So to actually kind of work something out a little bit with Don Johnson was a lot of fun. And then we shot it. We did 2 takes, and it was done.
Wow.
And what you want to do as a day player is don't be the reason they call cut.
Yeah.
Know your stuff. Know your marks. Know your place.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you are the guest to this family. They have this huge project where, the family is the main characters. And you don't want someone to come in and suck or hold things up or, they're giving a good performance and you drop your line, right?
Right.
So it was the most exciting thing in the world to not be the reason, them not have to call cut and to not be the reason they did. And so, he just said at the end, he said, hey man, great job. That's all I needed. And that was it. You just go in there, you work hard, you hit your marks, you know your stuff, make it real, and just be an actor. Do what they're paying you to do, which is be prepared and be flexible.
Yeah.
Because he changed it all around. And there was that part of me that was like freaking out, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to remember this. I'm not going to be able to do this. And it was just exciting to be able to do it.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to meet Cheech as well?
I did get a chance to meet Cheech, and I'll send you a picture of that. I took a fanboy photo with him. Okay. I didn't get a photo with Don because I was just like, like I wanted to. Of course I wanted to.
Of course.
But I was like, we just had a good scene. We just talked like actors. I'm not going to fanboy out on it. So, but yeah, Cheech is great. It's fantastic. And like I said, I grew up in Riverside. He opened he has one of the biggest collections of Chicano and Mexican artwork. Mm-hmm. And the library in Riverside has been transformed into a gallery. And he was responsible for getting all of this Latin and Chicano artwork permanently on presentation there in Riverside. So we got to talk about that for a little bit too. But, way beyond just the acting and the Cheech and Chong stuff. He's an incredible artist in his own right.
In your opinion, what would be your biggest role that you've played?
Well, I've done a couple of 2-person plays, stage shows in LA over the years. In terms of film and television, it's mostly been small guest stars or recurring guest stars. Mm-hmm. And one of those was Wicked City, which unfortunately got canceled It got canceled before my episodes even aired. It was just one of those things that was like canceled, done. It was a little too raw, a little too edgy for ABC at the time, because ABC was Disney as well, and you could do murder, a serial murderer in Los Angeles on ABC just didn't quite float. But in terms of actually having some work to do with that, with being I was a coroner, the LA County coroner on a crime show. It's like, you're coming back. You're going to go. So we shot 2 different locations for 2 different episodes and 2 different crime scenes. It was wonderful. And I was like, this is going to be great. I'm already recurring, and let's get on to that next crime. And then they canceled it. So it was one of those things where you just, and I look, that's not a sad sack story. I'm super grateful that I got to do what I did. It's the nature of this business. Right. And like I say, I don't have anything to lose. I'm in my 60s. I feel like my acting is even better than it was before. And my life isn't depending on if I get that job. Right. I really love getting that job. I really love showing up, seeing my name on a job sheet, on a call sheet, and just doing what I talked about with that Don Johnson thing, is just memorizing the stuff. And man, you're on location. They're paying you to be an actor. Right. It was hilarious. I was dressed up. I think of this thing as a coroner, crime guy. I was Don's coroner guy, Pete. I was his dead body guy, right? Right. So I was dressed in a San Francisco police uniform, and when we were first setting up, I was flying home the next day, so I went over to the Boudin sourdough place right there on Fisherman's Wharf. I ran over there because I wanted to get a couple loaves to take home, so I got a couple loaves. People in the line are like, "Oh, please, after you," and I was like, "Oh, okay." I had a cop uniform on. They thought I was a cop. So it was just like, just crazy, funny things like that, to just go. And it's like, it's so fun. It's just fun. Working as an actor is fun. That's why I love to do it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get too personal. We don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but tell me about your sobriety and
sure.
When did you decide you wanted to get sober?
Well, I was a late starter. I didn't really start drinking until college. And, I went to Cal Arts. It was known. It was a party school. There was a keg in the registration line at Cal Arts. So that kind of tells you what it was like. But I crossed the line like 10 years before I really did anything about it. The sad part is that big hole in my life, in my career, was my 30s, where I was fighting to not be an alcoholic every day, where I'm like, you know what? I was a functioning alcoholic, still showing up to work, but barely, waiting tables and playing in really crappy bar bands and really crappy bars and, drinking all night. And look, I have the disease. I am different than most people. I have this physical allergy to alcohol, the strange allergy that once I start drinking, I can't stop. My body does not ask nicely. It's like more. And then I have the obsession of the mind. Well, I am a classic alcoholic. It doesn't matter where I got it from. There's nobody to blame. My grandfather died of this disease before I was even born, and I was mad at him for a number of years. I was just mad. I was just mad that I had this, so they couldn't go back to being a cucumber after becoming a pickle. And so I fought it, and it's a progressive fatal disease. It really is. And until I put sobriety first, I couldn't squeeze sobriety into the rest of my life. I had to put it in the center of my life in order to live, in order to survive. And that sounds really dramatic, but the progressiveness of this disease, is deadly. And I have friends who have died. I had a sponsee who died a year ago, same age as me. I was walking him through the steps, and we see now fentanyl and all that stuff. I'm really glad they didn't have that when I was out doing damage. But sobriety and recovery, it's kind of like my mental illness. People don't want to talk about it. It's like, oh, whatever. Look, the strong seek help and the weak stand alone. I thought I could beat it on my own, and I was wrong. I was dead wrong.
Yeah.
And if I had just kind of conceded that fact 10 years earlier, who knows how different my life may have been. I was just stubborn. I had the stubbornness of the disease that almost killed me a couple of times. So I'm not, I am not, I don't go around with a big recovery patch on my shoulder, but when anyone asks me about recovery, of course I'll talk to them about it, because I'm here to pass on what was passed on to me. I am here to help another alcoholic, get sober. That's sort of my primary purpose as a sober guy. And so I have my little sober community. I have I have a sponsor and I have a sponsee. Two sponsees, actually. It keeps me bookended in the middle of this thing, because it's no joke. And those, anyone who's watching this who, is suffering from that and baffled by the fact that they can't stop, or baffled by the damage they're doing in their lives when they don't mean to do it around drugs and alcohol, there's a solution. There is hope. And we don't shoot our wounded. We don't, we embrace you. If you come in with this disease, we embrace you, and we help you through that hard time, as a sober community, because we know it's a life and death thing. And so there is, it was just a question of life or death. It sounds so dramatic, but it was pretty much true, where if I wanted to have a life, I had to get sober and stay sober.
Right.
And so I've been around the program for a number of years.
I was going to ask you, how long have you been sober?
I relapsed as part of my story. I've relapsed a couple of times over the year. I just celebrated 3 years again on September 1st. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for every day, and so anyone, if you have 1 hour, if you have 3 hours, if you're a struggling alcoholic and you hit the pillow tonight and you're sober, you win. Your community wins. Your family wins. When we were out there, it's like the destructiveness, the ripple effect of the disease on our family and our friends and our community and our loved ones is terrifying. But the good news is the effect of recovery and sobriety, the ripple effect of helping other people get sober, and just the ripple effect of your family, like being healed, and they're seeing that recovery is possible when someone is in a hopeless situation. So, the power, the ripple effect of recovery, no matter what it's recovery from, gambling, sex addiction, booze, drugs, money, whatever, that the power of recovery, the ripple effects of recovery can far outweigh the power of the destruction we once did. So, yeah.
And now that you have all of these roles that you appear in, television shows and such, but on the side you also do carpentry and you make fences, right?
I do. I actually, when I built the treehouse, I kind of got back into like, I like doing this. And, it was kind of like how the treehouse came about. Like when the band ended, when I was no longer, like when Answer to Classic Rock wasn't happening anymore for me, I built a fence in front of our house, right out on the street. And people were driving by and they were like, wow, do you do this? And I'm like, yes, I do. I'm acting like a fence builder. And so I started building fences around the neighborhood. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to do this legally. So I studied and I became a licensed contractor, C13, which is fences and gates, that sort of thing. I only do wood. I don't do vinyl and metal chain link. But I am pretty much as busy as I like to be, and it allows me to be an actor. It allows me to be a musician.
You're your own
where
boss.
I can pretty much, yeah. And it's not, my hats are off to the people who do construction 40 hours a week, that just go and do job after job. I feel lucky in the sense that I basically work alone. I know what to build and I know what to do, and I get to leave something better than when I found it. I'm working. I'm in the process of developing sort of a YouTube channel, and what it's going to be called is Mending Fences, where I will sort of host the work I'm doing, but also tie some recovery and some healing sort of stuff. We're mending the fences. We're literally mending fences, and we're, spiritually and creatively mending fences emotionally in our lives. And so I want to see that juncture between recovery and, recovery and solving problems in the real world, So looking into starting that project as well. Yeah, I'm out building fences, waiting for the weather to really cool down finally. I'm sure it's hot where you are, but it's very hot in LA right now.
It's beginning to cool off, believe it or not, in Texas, which is unusual.
The nights have been really nice. So, but I'm ready for summer to be done, man. I am so ready for some cool weather, and I want to go skiing. So, yeah.
Well, you were talking about mending fences and your sobriety, your spiritual path. Tell me about that, by the way, and what message are you putting across to people?
Well, it's a funny thing. People say, how long have you been sober? And I'm like, well, I've been in recovery since, I've been in recovery for 24 years. And then I'll say, but I only have 3 years sober. And I have to catch myself because it is a miracle that I have 3 hours sober. It's just a miracle. I am like most alcoholics, real alcoholics, I am hope to die drunk. It's like, I just, people who have relapsed at my age usually die. They usually just don't make it back, whether their body and heart can't take it or whether they're emotionally too embarrassed. They're like, oh, I should have been sober longer. I should have this, I should have that. And so mending fences, I'm mending the way I used to think, in terms of a defeatist attitude, or like, I'm too old to do this, or I am too whatever that is. I was a late bloomer in everything, everything, including my alcoholism. I got sober kind of late in life, but mending fences, a big part of sobriety, huge part of sobriety is amends. There's a whole amends process of making amends to those you can, direct amends wherever possible, healing things with the family. I mean, we went through some rough stuff, and we are in a place now that I only dreamed we would be, with my stepkids who love me and who want to be around me. Sometimes stepdad's really tricky. Especially when we went through the teen years, and and of course they love their dad, and it was just an awkward place to be at times, And I will say, like, part of the mending fences thing is like, I actually owed an amends to their father years ago and made that direct amends to him. And the beauty is we became friends. So we we could go to a baseball game or a play or something like that where the kids were involved, and we didn't have to like, be awkward around each other. We could be, cool and helpful and friendly. And a few years ago, he had terminal cancer and he passed a couple of years back. And I'm happy to say that due to mending fences and making those amends with him and with my stepkids, I was able to be there for him and with, to cook some food for him, to clean some things at his house, while he was struggling to keep it, going when he was going through chemo and all that stuff. So I got to reach out and mend something that seemed unmendable,
right.
early on.
Right.
Where it's like, well, I'm the new husband and that's the ex-husband and the father of my stepkids, and it got real complicated.
Of
But
course.
it got really simple with that amends process, where it's like when he passed away, we were in a good spot, and he knew I loved his kids, and he knew that I would do my best to be there for them.
Mhm.
And so mending fences when we think it's too late. We don't know what too late is.
Right.
We don't know. And so if we start the day, as Marcel the Shell with shoes on said, afresh, afresh, afresh. We start the day afresh.
Mm-hmm.
And with hope and optimism that we can heal and that we can mend, some of the mistakes that we've made, and we can mend things moving forward.
Right.
That sort of stuff.
Well, today, are you happy where you are?
Today I am happy. I know I posted this on Facebook. I had a bunch of auditions. There was ones I really wanted to get, and I can't say what they are. But I think I would be happier if I were working on a little show right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't wait to be happy. I need to, those things, getting this job, getting that role, getting a new car, whatever the thing is that will temporarily fix you,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work. That's what alcoholism was finding something outside of me to try to fix me, make me feel comfortable in my own skin. The gift that I've been given today is pretty much being okay with Kevin and in acceptance of who Kevin is now. So I don't have to wait to be a movie star or a rock star or whatever for me to feel fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to feel like, oh, okay, well, I'm an authentic person. And so I give what I can give to the jobs that I do, to the things that I do in a particular day, to an audition I get, to a relationship with my wife and my stepkids. I will leave the results up to that higher power, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that higher power is. I will leave the results of my day there. My job is just to be helpful today, be the best person I can be today, and stay out of the results.
Yeah.
Let the results, let the goodness of this universe sort those results for me and not work just for that validation.
Right.
It's a hard thing to do, especially as an actor and a musician. It's like you always want to, I want that validation. It's like I have learned to be more okay, warts and all, of who Kevin is now.
Yeah.
So that way I say, I'm happy to be where I am, and trying to train my monkey mind to just be okay with this ride wherever it goes.
You have to let the universe unfold as it should.
Yep, as it should.
You are, of course, on Facebook. Do you have Instagram, and do you have a website?
I do have Instagram. It's KB Fenceworks. I'll have to send you that link. And I don't have a website right now. I have an IMDb page. I'm Kevin Michael Brown in IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see my reel, my audition reel. what am I talking about? My demo reel is on there, and my credits and pictures and all that stuff. So that's Kevin Michael Brown on IMDb. And I could send you the link to the Instagram, and I'm on Facebook as well.
Yeah. So if anyone did want to get in touch with you, they could go through Facebook, or is there any other way?
Facebook or Instagram would be the best way to get a hold of me. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Kevin, I have enjoyed talking to you so much, and I now feel like I know you so much better. This has been a wonderful
beautiful
conversation.
I am so grateful that you asked, and I'm so grateful to be able to look. You asked an actor to talk about himself for an hour. Who's going to say? Actors just don't say no to that. We just love to hear ourselves talk. But I'm glad that you asked about the recovery and all of those things, because I think that is part of the more important message. And it's great to talk to another artist about artsy things, about what do we do, what do we love, where our passions lie. And it doesn't matter how old, man. It really doesn't. Part of me is getting older, but there's that youngster who's kind of on fire again. Hearing music differently, seeing movies differently now. So thank you for your platform here, and the ability to have a good chat with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much, Kevin. And we will see you next time on the J. Michael
Thanks so
Show.
much.
Goodbye.